Annemiek, you have been writing for your entire life. Tell me how it all got started.
It got started. I basically say it like the plane story because I went to Vancouver Island on holiday when I was about 10. And as a child, I got bored after a while listening to audiobooks and things like that. And I had my own little notebook where I wrote about my stories about, the journey. But, at one point you're done with describing the same white cloud. So I started a story about elves. It got about 30 pages long, and I started reading it to my mom and dad and my siblings. And I discovered two things. One, other people like my story, weirdly enough, and I actually like writing. Well, fast forward to when I was 13 years old, I started writing on this book in the Jonas Dubelaar series. It's basically a mix between Harry Potter, Aragon, and Narnia a little bit. I then wrote a prologue, published it at age 15, then published this one at 17, and went on from there.
And you knew from the start that this was going to be a big story?
Yes, I knew from the start that I wanted it to be 11 parts in the series because of the school period and then a bit in his adult life.
How does the story start?
The story starts with Jonas, my main character. He finds a little pocket watch on his attic and he fumbles with it, and then he gets transported to another world where he is found by a dragon rider. And he obviously immediately sees that he does not come from that world, which then he takes him to the capital of the country, the magical land that he found himself in. And then he gets sent to school to learn magic. On the one hand, he gets a relationship with a dragon and a bond with them. And on the other hand, he gets to go on very important missions for the empire that he got transported to.
And does the character grow over time? And do you intend to have your audience grow with him?
Yes, it grows along with age, a bit like Harry Potter, but because he travels between worlds, from this one as we know it, and the other one he travels back after every book. He travels back to our country, our world. So it's basically covers 2 years of his life, but that is a little bit of a sci-fi element in there. It get a little bit of influence, but especially in the first 2 parts, he is kind of, a teenager, and they're all insecure, and he definitely grows past that.
And you yourself are also getting older. Does it help to have the character evolve also with you as your own journey in life?
Well, I mean, you grow as a writer anyway. The more you write and the more you receive feedback, and the more you read reviews as well, how it gets interpreted, how you can tune your story better. What I especially like is that I started very young, because then it was easier to immerse myself in the experience of a teenager, and now it gets a bit more distant.
Sure.
But the story does evolve, and it does help.
And tell me a little bit about your writing process, because I assume this is not your day job. However, it is a very ambitious process. So how do you find the time to create these stories?
I've got asked this question every time since I started this series, and frankly, my answer has always honestly been, I don't know how I find the time. Like, in hindsight, I don't know. I just do in the moment. When I was first at home and still living with my parents, I just got behind the computer for 1 or 2 hours, and I just wrote, and could be like a third or half of a chapter, and then, I would have the time for that like that. Right now, I've tried various ways of starting, because starting is most of the time the most difficult thing. So I lay the threshold very low. For example, I just say, like, you've got to write 1 word today. And it seems ridiculous, but that's how you get started, because when you write the first word, the rest comes naturally. You just start flowing and thinking about it. So it really helps me. And sometimes I write like 250 words, and sometimes more.
Once you have written the first version, then of course you get the editorial process. How does that work if you're working by yourself? Or do you have someone who reads along with you? Or how do you do that?
Well, I do it pretty professionally, actually. First, I have proofreaders or beta readers, preferably people who have already read the series, because it's the next part in the series, and sometimes it's pretty relevant to know what happened beforehand, to avoid certain comments that you're like, oh, why is this way? Well, if you read, you would have known. So that's a prerequisite. and then it goes to the actual editing, and I have someone who does that for me.
And is that a long process, or are you kind of going through it several times, or how does that work?
Well, I basically have two routes: first proofreading, and then the actual editing, and then I of course adjust accordingly. And sometimes it takes as long as writing the first draft itself.
But it's worth it, right? Because you want to bring the book to market when it's really ready and when it's good enough.
Yes, because I operate as an indie author and I want to compete with, well, the books that you see in the bookstore. And I think I've already accomplished that and I know how to do that now.
Well, and what I like about the indie process is you have to learn all the aspects, not just the writing, not just the editorial process, but also bringing it to market, even printing it. Because if you show me the book, I mean that's a lovely cover. It's hardcover. It's got its heft. The inside is well done. Was that difficult to get a hang of?
Well, I actually mentioned it today to another author. I really love that this is an industry that you can really learn by doing. And it was one of the things that I considered when I first started self-publishing, because it's something I wanted. I wanted to explore how it worked. I wanted to know. And I had another thought, like when a traditional publisher would show interest, that I would be knowledgeable enough to know it. But I'm also quite industrious, so it's just my nature to be interested in these kind of things.
And for instance, a cover design. How was your process?
Yes, well, for this one, it's interesting because I write middle grade fantasy, so the target audience is pretty young. It doesn't really look like it. So when I first started thinking about this, I was like, okay, do I want it to be focused on the fantasy aspect or like the middle grade aspect? And I chose for the fantasy aspect. I found later that it became less obvious that it was suitable for that age bracket, but that's fine. And for the cover design itself, I hired a professional designer, Dominique Branick. He also does for Patty van Delft, Drakan Duma, and also Brandon Sanderson and other names. So I'm really glad that he delivers great work. And personally, what I like from my series and what I found by doing it is I like two elements, because less is more really applies here. And I like to take something that you can see as kind of a catalyst. So you can guess the genre, but it doesn't tell anything on the plot. It doesn't give any spoilers.
It's setting the mood and signaling what kind of book people can expect, but then let them discover it
This is
themselves.
also without saying anything.
Yeah, but that's also an art.
But the book, it makes sense in hindsight.
Well, I do recognize the watch there. That's on that of course is a very important device.
Yeah, it's a catalyst.
Yeah. So 11 books. That is extremely ambitious. Do you have like a timeline or planning for this?
Well, not really. I know that usually it takes 2 years for me to write and publish the book, so that's just what I am mindful of. If I can do it quicker, I will. But I'm also the kind of writer that likes to just leave it for a bit and then come back to it, because you'll get new insights. I don't like writing fast and just publishing whatever I wrote without looking at it again.
Yeah. But it just requires a lot of stamina and consistency to keep that process going. What are sources of energy and inspiration for you? Where do you find the time to kind of charge yourself up to continue?
Yeah, well, by rereading my own work. And I think most writers recognize is like you have the moment that you think like, this is great, and you start fangirling about your own books, and other parts are like, this is the worst I've ever written. So every writer has theirs, I do too. And as well, just interaction with readers. We are now at Castlefest, and I get to talk with people, and with people say like, I really liked it, or I came specifically for your book when there's like 60 people around. That does energize.
Yeah, I can totally imagine that is very rewarding because writing is in its core a very solitary process. But I imagine that you have the people that you have met here in mind when you're telling the story.
Yes, of course I do.
If you could travel forward in time and create the future for your storytelling career, what does it look like, let's say 15 years from now?
15 years from now, well, I think every writer dreams of, you know, the film of their books. But also, I would really love it if it would be available in even more languages now, because I have my debut is a prologue on this series has been published a few years ago already by a Taiwanese publisher in Chinese. I've got the prologue in English now. So those are 3 languages, but like 10 or more, I would really like that.
And language is one of your strong points, right? You speak Chinese, don't you?
Yeah, I speak Chinese.
My goodness. How? Where do you find the time to learn all that?
Well, I studied it, so it was my major.
Is there anything that you take from that Chinese culture that that you integrate in your books, or is that a totally different world?
Well, actually, I'm writing a book now that is based on Chinese history, and I want to give like a little peek into the culture. I want to move away from all the politics, because I've covered that in my major, but when COVID hit, they got kind of a bad rep. And there's just, honestly, if you look at it without any bias, they have a history of over 4,000 years old. It's so interesting. So I just want to give a little insight to make people interested, to exploring more about that on their own.
Is that a book in the series, or is that a different book?
It's a completely separate book. Yeah, so it would be a Chinese historical fantasy, and there will be a standalone.
I am so curious about that one. Where can people find more about you and your writing process, and especially English-speaking viewers? Where can they get your book, your English book?
My English book now is being distributed by Bookfold. It's an UK-based company. I have it myself at events as well. I'm trying to connect it to my bookstore, but there are some technical issues yet. But you can find me online basically everywhere. And if you can't find anything, don't hesitate to shoot me a message and I'll help you.
Excellent. Well, I wish you all the best for your endeavors. Thank you so much for telling me about your writing process, your creative process. I am very impressed, and I feel very humbled as a beginning writer. But it's nice to see someone who's kind of is showing what you can do and how you can grow as a writer and also as a self-publisher.
Glad to be of service.
Thank you so much.